a dying cowboy, a newborn with no milk, and a shocking offer that changed the Wild West forever. Stranded in Apache land with death only hours away, this man was given a choice no one could imagine. Your baby lives, but you must marry one of us. What happened next rewrote fate, crossed enemy lines, and proved that mercy can be stronger than guns. If you love powerful Wild West stories filled with emotion, sacrifice, and unexpected humanity, make sure you subscribe to Love in the Old West, like this video, share it with someone who loves frontier legends, and comment below what you would have done in his place. Now let's begin this unforgettable story. The sun was already sinking when the cowboy realized his baby's cries were no longer just hunger but desperation. Dust clung to his boots, his throat burned dry, and the small bundle in his arms felt lighter than it should have. The frontier had taught him many harsh lessons, but none as cruel as this moment. The ranch was still miles away, his horse exhausted, and his wife had been buried only weeks earlier. Every step forward felt like a gamble with fate, and every cry from the child cut deeper than any knife the Wild West could offer. As he crossed a narrow valley, shapes appeared ahead, silent figures watching from the rocks. Apache women emerged slowly, not with weapons raised, but with eyes sharp and unreadable. The cowboy froze, instinct telling him to protect his child, yet his strength was fading fast. One of the women stepped closer, noticing the baby's cracked lips and weak movements. She spoke softly in broken English, asking what had happened. Pride nearly silenced him, but desperation forced the truth from his lips. The women listened carefully, exchanging glances among themselves. One of them reached behind her shoulder and brought out a small skin bag filled with milk. The offer came calmly, without cruelty or mockery. They would feed the baby, keep it alive through the night, but survival on the frontier always came at a price. Their condition was spoken clearly and without shame. The cowboy must marry one of them, binding himself to their people. The words hung in the air, heavier than gunsmoke. The cowboy's mind raced. He had grown up hearing stories of savagery, of deals made in blood and betrayal. Yet the women standing before him showed no hatred, only certainty. His baby whimpered again, and that sound crushed every lingering doubt. Honor, fear, and old beliefs battled inside him, but love won. He nodded slowly, knowing that refusal would mean death for the child. The women moved quickly, gently taking the baby and feeding it with practiced care. That night, the cowboy sat near their fire, watching the women work together as one family. There was no celebration, no mockery of his weakness. Instead, there was order, respect, and quiet strength. He noticed how the chosen woman never boasted or smiled in victory. She treated the agreement as responsibility, not conquest. For the first time since his wife's death, the cowboy felt something unfamiliar, safety mixed with humility. In the days that followed, the arrangement became reality. The Apache camp traveled slowly, allowing the baby to grow stronger. The woman he was to marry showed patience, teaching him how to care for the child properly, how to move with the land instead of fighting it. The cowboy began to see how little he truly understood about survival. The frontier had not spared him because of his toughness, but because others had chosen mercy when they could have chosen power. When the marriage was finally performed, it was simple and solemn. No preacher, no papers, only witnesses from the tribe and the endless sky above. The cowboy spoke his promise carefully, aware that words mattered more here than signatures. He was no longer just a rancher or a widower. He was a man bound by choice and necessity, standing between two worlds that rarely trusted each other. Life did not become easy, but it became meaningful. The cowboy learned the language slowly, and the Apache woman learned his ways as well. Arguments happened, misunderstandings burned hot, yet respect always cooled the fire. The baby grew healthier each day, laughing where once there had been only cries. The cowboy realized that the deal he once feared had saved more than a life. It had reshaped his own. News of the Union spread across nearby settlements, stirring rumors and anger. Some called him a traitor, others a fool. Yet when they saw the healthy child and the calm strength of his new family, their words softened. The cowboy stopped caring about their judgment. The frontier was ruthless, and survival often required crossing lines drawn by fear. He had crossed one and found humanity on the other side. Seasons passed, and the man who once rode alone now walked with purpose. He learned that the Apache women had not made the offer out of weakness but wisdom. They understood that life was more valuable than pride, and that unity could be forged even in desperate moments. The cowboy often thought back to that first night. realizing how close he had come to losing everything. In the end, the story was not about a bargain or a forced choice. It was about how the Wild West stripped people down to their truest selves. Faced with death, the cowboy chose love over fear. Faced with power, the Apache women chose compassion over cruelty. Together, they proved that even in the harshest lands, mercy could write a stronger legacy than violence. The frontier continued to change, but that single decision echoed through generations. A baby lived, a family was formed, and two worlds found common ground where none was expected. In a land built on blood and dust, an unlikely promise became a reminder that survival is not just about strength, but about the courage to trust when there is nothing left to lose. The years that followed tested that promise in ways the cowboy could never have imagined. Living among the Apache was not a peaceful storybook ending. It was a daily lesson in humility. He woke before dawn, learned to read the wind, to understand silence, to listen more than he spoke. Mistakes were made, sometimes costly ones, but each error became a teacher. The woman he had married, Naya, never treated him as a prisoner of a bargain. She treated him as a man who had chosen responsibility, and that choice carried weight. At first, the tribe watched him carefully. Trust was not given easily on the frontier, especially to a white man who had once belonged to the world that hunted them. He felt their eyes on his back, measuring every word, every action. Instead of demanding acceptance, he worked. He carried water, repaired shelters, guarded children during travel, and learned to hunt without wasting life. Slowly, suspicion gave way to recognition. He was not one of them, but he was no longer an outsider. The child became the bridge no one expected. The baby grew strong, its laughter echoing through the camp, drawing smiles even from the elders. Apache women who had first fed the child now helped raise it, teaching songs older than memory. The cowboy watched his son learn two worlds at once, one shaped by the land, the other by blood. He realized that survival was no longer his only duty. Teaching balance was. Conflict eventually came, as it always did. A group of settlers rode into Apache territory searching for stolen cattle. They found the camp instead. Tension tightened like a rope ready to snap. Rifles were raised, voices sharpened. The cowboy stepped forward before anyone else could act. He recognized one of the men, an old acquaintance from his ranching days. The recognition cut both ways. Accusations flew, anger burned, and fear stood ready to spill blood. The cowboy spoke clearly, standing between guns and bows. He told them the truth. There were no stolen cattle, only a family trying to survive. He showed them his son, his wife, and the life he had chosen. Some scoffed, others hesitated. In that hesitation, peace found its opening. The settlers left without violence, but word spread fast. Some called him a traitor again, louder this time. Others quietly wondered if the stories they'd been told were wrong. The Apache elders spoke that night around the fire, their voices low and serious. They told the cowboy that his choice that day had tied his fate to theirs forever. There would be no turning back. He accepted that without hesitation. Time hardened him in ways the old frontier never had. He became stronger but not cruel, quieter but not cold. Naya stood beside him through every trial, her strength steady, her trust earned. Love grew slowly between them, not as a sudden spark, but as a fire fed daily by shared hardship and mutual respect. What began as survival became partnership. When soldiers eventually came, everything changed. Orders were clear, mercy was not. The tribe prepared to move, knowing resistance would bring destruction. The cowboy faced his hardest choice yet. He could leave with his son, return to the settlements and survive. Or he could stay, risking everything with the people who had saved his child when the world had turned its back. He stayed. The journey that followed was brutal. Hunger, cold nights, and constant fear followed them. Yet through it all, the cowboy never questioned his decision. He watched Naya guide the tribe with calm resolve, protecting children, preserving dignity in the face of loss. He realized that courage was not found in gunfights or conquest, but in endurance. Years later, when the land finally settled into uneasy peace, the cowboy stood on a ridge watching his grown son ride confidently across the plains. The boy spoke both languages, understood both histories, and carried neither hatred nor fear in his heart. That was the true outcome of the offer made long ago. Not ownership, not control, but continuity. The cowboy often returned in memory to that first desperate moment in the desert. A dying baby, a dying man, and a choice offered not with a knife but with milk. The world remembered the Wild West as a place of violence and division. But hidden within its dust were stories like this where mercy rewrote destiny. He never denied where he came from, nor did he forget the life he lost. But he understood now that the frontier was never just land to be claimed. It was a test of humanity, and in the hardest moment of his life, humanity had answered him in the most unexpected way. That answer echoed long after his footprints faded from the sand. It lived in his family in shared bloodlines, and in the quiet understanding that survival, without compassion, is only another form of death. And so the story ended not with gunfire or glory, but with something far rarer in the Wild West: peace earned through courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to trust when everything else was gone. Time moved on, but the echo of that choice never faded. The cowboy was no longer the, desperate man who had once wandered the desert with death at his heels. He became a father, a husband, and a bridge between two worlds that had long feared each other. His hair turned gray, his hands grew rough. Yet gratitude never left his eyes, the gratitude of a man who had seen his child saved when hope was gone. His son grew into a strong young man who knew the truth of his birth. He understood that his life had been preserved not by violence or conquest, but by mercy and courage. He spoke both languages, respected both traditions, and carried neither bitterness nor shame. To those who met him, he stood as living proof that compassion could survive even in the harshest lands. When the cowboy's final days came, he sat watching the sunset paint the plains in gold. Naya was beside him, their children nearby, their laughter soft in the evening air. In a quiet voice, he said that if fate ever placed him back in that moment of despair, he would make the same choice again. Because one act of trust had not only saved a life, it had created a future. This was not a story of victory through force, but of humanity found at the edge of survival. In the dust of the Wild West, where cruelty often ruled, a single offer of milk proved that mercy could shape destiny and leave a legacy stronger than any legend.